Hey everybody, John Fenn here, Church Without Walls International. Hey, visit our website. You'll find our weekly thoughts there. That's a weekly teaching that comes out on Fridays in U.S. time, and you can also sign up for my monthly e-newsletter. It's in the templates and in the headers of those that we put our Zoom meetings, our conferences, things of that nature. Also prophetic words. Now today I'm doing something a little unusual. I'm going to talk on a large-scale prophetic basis of where the world is headed, what's happening around us, because there's so much confusion out there and Christians are wondering what's going on. In the West, a lot of Christians tied their faith to a political process. We have such controversy and such with the pandemic and everything else. And I just want to explain on the larger scale, spiritually and prophetically, what is going on and try to do that in a very concise way. I'm going to put this in writing in a longer, more detailed word in my weekly thoughts, the end of October and into November of 2021. So you can go to our website, cwowi.org, cwowi.org, look under weekly thoughts, and then you'll find the archived ones there. You can go back to October and November of 2021. So basically it's this. In the West, we see, especially Europe, the Western Hemisphere, Australia, etc. And what we see is that the West used to be governed by faith and reason and tradition, holding fast to a nation of laws and that history and faith and tradition all embraced. And what we have now is what is called emotional reasoning. And let me explain the difference to you. Emotional reasoning believes that the freedom of the individual will is the highest and best for a society. It's the greatest expression of the expression of the individual. Such a society looks at the tradition of the West and says I don't embrace those values anymore. A traditional nation believes in a common moral good, a commonality. And so the government uses that moral commonality for the good of the nation, of the state, of the city, of the town, of the village, of the community. So that is the traditional role of government, to hold to a common moral standard, absolutes. And the founding of, at least in the United States, was that our Creator has given to every individual rights which government cannot infringe on. In other words, government doesn't give rights, the Creator does. And so that's the United States. And so if this is rejected for what's called emotivism or emotional reasoning, what happens is that the will and the intellect and the thought of the individual rises up. And so an emotional reasoning society no longer agrees on what those moral absolutes are. And so as a result of that, and people even doubting if those exist, to question and to reject those means that which was called evil is now called good, and that which was called good is now called evil. And that is because of the rejection of the tradition, the moral values, the common moral values that a nation once had. And so in such a nation, just like in the fall of Rome, I love history, I love studying this. And in the fall of Rome, what happened was the nation became a collection of strangers because they were so caught up in individual expression and what they thought. Each individual assigned moral value. See, when a Christian sees love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, patience, meekness, kindness, goodness, all those different things, godliness, moral uprightness, etc. We say those traits of God, and God calls those good, therefore they are good. And we hold to that. And that's where a nation that's built upon a constitution or a charter that holds those same values to say, God has said these are good and they are good. Our lives bear them out, that they lead to a life of prosperity and order and stability and everything else. But if you are in emotional reasoning and you exalt yourself above that and your own thoughts, then you have the right you express the right to say, I'm not necessarily calling love a good thing or godliness a good thing. And in fact, what happens is, in a society such as that rejects those things, what happens is that they start rejecting any philosophy, any religion, any thought that is outside of self. And so in ancient Rome, what happened was they started tearing down statues to war heroes and things of that nature because of the imperfection in their lives. And instead of embracing culture and placing events within the culture of the time and history, they looked at in ancient Rome, they looked at the past through their modern eyes, and they rejected all that those old heroes and all those old standards and all those moral virtues of ancient Rome and the Republic and everything else and that they stood for, and they rejected them and they tore them down. This is what we see happening in the West. And so that person will reject anything that comes from the outside, any religion, any philosophy, etc. No one can tell them anything. And they're angry if you infringe upon their individual right of expression. Basically, what they call right is right. And so as a result of that, what happens with Christians is that there are some foundational things. When we see this happening, and when society no longer holds to the same value that we're Christian in nature, that is the moral uprightness, the honesty, the hard work, and all the things that are also the qualities of God expressed in the Judeo-Christian tradition. When that is rejected, a lot of Christians are saying, "What is going on? What is happening?" Well, what is happening is this: that Christians have to learn you need to get out of the "when can I escape this world" mentality, and you need to be asking yourself, and this is what the Spirit of God is saying right now, is how can I live within this society? How can I make a difference within this culture that rejects more and more with government approval and mandates and everything else? How can I live within that culture that is so different than my own traditional values? And the way you do that, folks, is what was done in Rome. What you see in other cultures and societies is you have to gather with those who you value, who are on the same spiritual page. You know, I've shared in many other times how the Lord appeared to me November 4th of 2001. And he told me, he said, "I want you to start a house church and a house church network and structure it in such a way to facilitate the development of house churches around the world." And I've been faithful to do that. But when I asked him, why do you want me to do this? He said, "It's against a time to come. So be a resource for them, for it's against a time to come." Well, when he says be a resource and it's against a time to come, that sets me on a path of studying society and history and culture so that we can be that resource. And what I've seen above everything else is that we are each other's resources. It's interesting, the society that we have, even within Christians, have divided into. There are 5 traits of what I would call seeker-friendly Christianity, and that hold true to what many of us would call a wishy-washy, soft, cultural Christian. Those 5 traits are that everybody believes that God's a creator and he watches over people, and that again, seeker friendly. He wants people to be good and fair and kind to one another, and the central goal is for God to make me happy and prosperous and blessed and whole. And number 4, that God, really is my relationship with God is basically just to help me resolve life's problems. And number 5, good people go to heaven when they die. And that's kind of like that cultural, cultural, seeker-friendly, wishy-washy Christianity. But there's another group that says, hey, I'm walking with God in daily life, and there is accountability. There are moral absolutes. We do need to be challenged in our faith and in our life, and that God is for more than just resolving problems in life. It's to know him and to walk with him. What Jesus said in John 17:3, "This is eternal life, to know you, Father, and your Son, Jesus, whom you have sent," in John 17:3. And so what happens is when we see society collapsing around us, folks, you need to find people on the same spiritual page. You need to find those who value the same sense of faith and community and uprightness and the things traditional, because in society, as time goes along, you're going to find they're going to become more and more important as a resource to help take care of one another. The most foundational truth is that peace and order in your life will come through first making space for God, making space daily for the grace of God in your life. You want peace and order, it comes first and foremost through those means. So where's the Father taking us? He's taking us to the values that are of God. They've always been there. And that's order and stability and prayer and hard work and integrity and a sense of community and belonging to one another. And when when society devolves into chaos and situational ethics and arbitrary laws and rules and things of that nature, you have to value the people around you. The days of throwaway relationships in the church are gone, folks. The true church is finding others who are on the same spiritual page, because that's what's happening in the world today, is the rejection of what is a virtuous, moral, upright society that held to and agreed upon a basic tenet of moral uprightness, and that's being rejected for individualism, for emotional relativism, emotional reasoning that says, I am going to reject any outside philosophy, any outside religion, and what I think is good, and what I think is bad, and that's the way I'm going. Unfortunately, even Christians, some Christians who call themselves Christians, have fallen into that, but it's easy to discern. So if you hold to those values, folks, I just encourage you to find other people on the same spiritual page. You've got to embrace what is life. I go back to one of the visitations I had with the Lord, where I was in the Spirit. I'd been praying, and I was sitting on our sofa and love seat. We had them in an L-shaped, and the Lord, I was in the Spirit, and the Lord came and sat down on that other love seat. And I've shared this before about how there was a stack of magazines, on the table. And now if you walked in the natural, you just see me sitting on the sofa, but I'm in the Spirit and I'm seeing the Lord sitting down there, and he takes his thumb and he goes like this through the pages of the top magazine, goes like that. And then he was silent. And it was a secular magazine about nature and stuff like that. And not just nature, but society. And it holds to the kind of evolutionist type of viewpoint. And he was silent for a minute, and it made me a little bit nervous. And I knew that when he was going, he was reading those pages. He just knew, he was just like taking in everything that was there. And I said, Lord, does this offend you? And he looked at me and he said this. He said, it's not whether it offends me or not. It's that there's no life in these pages. And that changed me that day, that visitation. There's more to it. He then said, I want to teach you about holiness, and I've shared some about that. But that experience right there, where he said there's no life in these pages, it changed the direction of my life, not in a huge way, but just in a nuanced way, that I only want to be involved with things which are life, which are alive. Embrace that which is alive, and I'm dropping everything else that's not alive and doesn't contribute to the life of God in my life. And that's the choice that's actually happening in the body of Christ right now, as we see so much of society devolving around us, and the rise of individual assignment of values, so that we have to go to work and we have to function in that, and not be offended and not say, oh, these are my rights, I'm going to stay up there. There is a time for that, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that the Christian is observing and is not ignorant of the times and the seasons of which we live. And in privately, and as much as we can, we are looking for life. We're looking for others who are on the same spiritual page of life, so to speak. And we don't have time for the things which don't give life anymore. The things of fear and confusion and doubt and everything else. So I encourage you this day to look for those on the same spiritual page, whether you find them in person, on Zoom, Skype, whatever the case is, and feed on that which gives life and peace and resonates in your spirit, and not that which stirs up strife and everything else. Stop looking for, what the latest buzz is, that some weird prophetic thing on down the pike, and refocus on who you know, because that's what it's all about. It's walking with the Lord, not just holding to external values, but walking with him and his values. All right, God bless. Talk to you later.